Katie Lafalcho. Welcome to Irish Granny Tarot. This is video number 4 of our book, Escaping from Eden by Paul Wallis. This will be the conclusion, and I'm going to do a drawing for the people who've donated to the book fund and read some cards. So let's get to the book. We were talking about Edgar Mitchell, former astronaut, who started the IONS Institute. I mentioned it elsewhere in the book. They've done tons of research about all things parapsychological, metaphysical, astrological, astronomical. Very interesting group. So he was from Roswell and got the inside scoop from people that were reluctant or threatened and didn't talk to the government. Paul Wallis thinks the governments realize the public wants to know, and they're slowly getting into what they call soft disclosure. Not one great big gigantic earth-shattering sort of revelation, but little bits and tidbits here and there. Here's a picture NASA took. Wonder what that is, that kind of thing. So in 2011, there was a fight between the United States and England, UK, over extraditing a guy called Gary McKinnon. Very interesting story. This guy's a computer hacker, and for fun. And this guy was just having fun, getting nosy, and he hacked into a NASA computer, and he saw things, and he had enough background in science that he was taken aback by what he was seeing, and he felt that what he was seeing uncovered secrets about ET contact and collaboration between the government, NASA, other governments, and aliens. So on YouTube, you can watch the Parliament decision. They refused to extradite him to the United States for trial because the US was threatening him with 60 years in jail for hacking into their computers. And England took such exception to that they improved their laws to protect him even more. So they had this debate in Parliament. It's on YouTube, and in the debate they included images of UFOs and alleged names of alien ET officers. In 2008, the senior Vatican theologian, the director of the Vatican Observatory, Father Jose Gabriel Fares, SJ, that means Society of Jesus. This guy's a Jesuit. He warned Christians to get ready because they would soon be welcoming our ET brothers. Well, I hope we also welcome our ET sisters. Anyway, Wallis says that this doesn't sound like some kind of alien life that's one-celled or bacteria or algae on a distant moon. Come on. And he says it sounds like they're trying to prepare us for contact with another civilization. In 2009, Pope Benedict called for an international colloquium. So that's like a little get-together for a chat, to discuss theological implications of contact with ET civilizations, and he managed to get 30 top scientists and theologians together. They had 5 days of closed-door sessions, and they did have a formal press release, heavily edited. And these are the words of Father Funes, I guess I mispronounced his name. Quote, "Astrobiology does not conflict with our faith because we cannot put limits on the creative freedom of God. To say it with St. Francis of Assisi, if we can consider earthly creatures as brothers or sisters, why could we not speak of a brother alien? He would also belong to creation. As a multiplicity of creatures exists on earth, so there could be other beings also intelligent, created by God." Or what he doesn't say is that our entire narrative is erroneous, and sorry about that, we misled you for kind of a long time, allegedly. So that was the official statement. Did the Vatican expect some kind of disclosure soon and want to reassure the faithful, you know? It's a bold move from a very conservative Benedict. Pope Benedict was, you know, we won't go into it here, but just rest assured that he wasn't wild and crazy. And as Paul Wallis says, and I would concur with this, if he had made this statement 400 years ago, he'd been burnt at the stake. So, as Wallis says, control beliefs rule our opinions. Churches, governments, whoever's in charge, we buy the party line, and these institutions of control and power are extremely resistant to change. But in 2001, there was a big to-do at the National Press Club in DC. 60 military, government, corporate, civil, aviation, and scientific witnesses presented what they knew about ETs and their technology to a panel. And many were old men, and they were breaching their security agreements, their protocols, official silence. Many of them cried, giving their eyewitness testimony. And they were facing threats and orders and programming that had kept them silent for decades. A lot of the media were there, but nobody reported about it. But a member of the Vatican Curia, which is, you know, the kind of the structure of the government of the Roman Catholic Church, they reported on it. Monsignor Corrado Balducci, senior theologian and official Vatican exorcist, FYI, had this to say. ET encounters are not demonic, and he would know, are not demonic. They're not due to psychological impairment. They're not a case of entity attachment. These encounters deserve to be studied carefully. That's quite a statement. And in Harper's Magazine in 2006, he said about the question of how we interpret our sacred texts and what kind of entities we might expect to find in them. He said, quoting Jesus in the Gospel of John, "I have others who are not of this fold. I must bring them also." And this Reverend Doctor, so he's a scientist and he's a priest, says, "There are unquestionably non-human intelligent beings in the Bible. Any creature of this universe created and loved by the same God who created and loved us, would they deserve to be called alien?" That's an interesting take. So this is the senior Vatican astronomer, is who this guy was. So all of this encouraged Paul Wallis to consider his new interpretation of these ancient texts. He realized he wasn't alone there. And he asks once again, are these memories of historical fact? If ETs are extended family, as these people in the Vatican, these spokespeople in the Vatican attest, how are we related? Are we their brothers? Are we their children? Are we their hybrids? Depends on what you read. So I have a little thing here at the side. Let me quickly look at this. I'm trying to be really cautious about some topics, like evolution. So this says we might get our answer from the Human Genome Project. So a guy called Makulov and Sherbak, they mapped our DNA, and they claim that we were intelligently designed, but we're not exactly talking intelligent design of creationists. And fundamentalists. This is a far more complicated way of looking at it. I'm not attesting to any veracity of any theories of anything. I'm just telling you what this book says. And what they say from the Genome Project, that our DNA holds arithmetic patterns and symbolic language encoded into it. The team published its findings for peer review in the international science journal Icarus. Remember what happened to him. Their conclusion is that 97% of our DNA's non-coding sequence, what in the past has been colloquially described as junk DNA, is in reality not junk at all, but is in fact genetic code made from non-terrestrial life forms. Now, these are a couple of scientists from an astrophysical institute, a university. I can't pronounce the names, so I won't, but you can look that up. Maxim Makulov, M-A-K-U-L-O-V. And if it sounds like alternative science, they're not alone. And once again, he talks about people like Watson and Crick and Orgel and other such scientists that are very mainstream, winners of all kinds of big prizes. So these two guys are among the highest authorities on DNA research in the world. This is not fringe. And the beginning of this thesis began in 81 with Orgel and Crick. And in parentheses I wrote, yes, that Crick. And he had won the 1962 Nobel Prize for the double helix. So these are not opinions of fakes or flakes or unstable people or uninformed people. And the journal that they published this stuff in, Icarus, in 81, it was edited by Carl Sagan. So there we go with Sagan again. He can't seem to make up his mind. Do I believe it? Do I not believe it? In his Contact movie, E.T. Signal was all done by prime numbers. So what did he know? The Human Genome Project found that we have prime number signatures in our genetic code. You can't argue with this. This is fact. Prime numbers are not, they don't usually occur in nature, in natural patterns. They are created by an intelligence. But they do happen in our DNA in 9 multiples of 37. And it's very hard to ascribe this to natural patterns. The chances are 1 in 10 trillion that could have happened naturally. The human genome scientists, quote, believe that our DNA has non-random structure. Thought went into it, and mathematics went into it. And Makulov, the guy I quoted earlier, writes, sooner or later we have to accept the fact that all life on Earth carries the genetic code of our extraterrestrial cousins, and that evolution is not exactly what we think it is. His words, not mine. And this is the guy that's one of the greatest, most famous astrobiologists. Is that his title? In the world. Let me make sure that I said that right. Oh well. So this does seem to support Crick's notion of panspermia, sort of a seeding of life in the universe. Von Daniken pushes it. Sagan kind of connected himself to it. And a lot of sci-fi movies like this theory. Let's see here. So Makulov and his partner again say about interstellar transmission of coding for intelligence in our DNA, quote, once fixed, the code might stay unchanged over cosmological timescales. In fact, it's the most durable construct known. Once the genome is appropriately rewritten, the new code with the signature will stay frozen in the cell and its progeny, which might then be delivered through space and time. It represents an exceptionally reliable storage for an intelligent signature. A jubilant scientist on a project, the project of using a mass spectrometer to analyze the structure of DNA, a scientist by the name of Matt Taylor told the press, this means that comets contain an awesome cocktail of organic material that, if provided with the right conditions, could then go on to form life. And they found this cocktail that they pulled apart in a comet. So, modern sci-fi movies often tell of spaceships sent out with passengers in suspended animation, like an ark. It's a retelling of mythology. Then there's the Zulu legend of Unkulunkulu. So he was the first ancestor, and he came as a result of seeds from outer space. Many life forms did. Humans were helped by a female entity who taught them farming and hunting and how to make beer. And a lizard comes and tells them, humans will die. In other words, they're made aware that they're mortal, that they will die. And this is very analogous to the limiting of the lifespan in the Bible, and the limiting of the lifespan in the Sumerian cuneiform tablets, and in the Popol Vuh. So fiction resonated the longest throughout history, human history, when it speaks the truth. The human genome is not about spaceships. It's about DNA coming on space rocks, comets. And then the question that Paul asks is, was there a follow-up tweak? So chapter 11, Father God, I Wonder. So as we mentioned throughout these videos, he spent a lot of time in contemplation, forced by his broken leg. And then he had conversations with his friend, who was kind of a conventional Christian thinker. And the friend really challenged him. He said, you can't be Christian and believe any of this stuff. Wallace says, why not? God is the source of all we do and of all life. And if the life is ETs, and God is the source of ETs and all they do, because it's life, and God is the source of all life. I mean, we're talking in circles a little bit here, but if God created all things, he created them, and so what's the big deal, right? Then he points out to his friend, look at all the dog breeds that we engineered. And then there are these things called Pisleys or Grolar bears, which are a combination of a polar bear and a grizzly bear, that are now happening in nature because they're a hybrid, because of habitat changes due to climate change. We indirectly caused that. Then there's Dolly, the cloned sheep that died of old age in 2003. And he says, if we have been hybridized or genetically engineered by ETs, is God not our father, their father? I mean, what's the deal? And he agrees with Father Funes from the Vatican, who says we need to expand our intellectual horizons. Come on, you guys, this is not threatening, and it's not really that much of a paradigm shift to believe that if God created zebras and humans and grizzly bears, God could also create alien life. I mean, I guess I'm speaking now in the context of a religious Christian point of view. Heaven is up in the sky, but we don't really say how far up, you know? And so what below heaven did God create? This would be the kind of argument that he has with his peers in the religious community. So he says, we're part of a bigger family, and it's just a bigger family than we knew. And he says that it's obvious that the people of Israel believed their particular God, Yahweh, was one of a group of powerful ones. Joshua says, ignore the rest and let's get into monotheism. But it takes a very long time for that to grab hold. And the Bible is just really not clear about who, what, how, from where these powerful ones are, and when they take off, when they leave. So he cites numerous biblical references, which I read them, but I didn't bother to copy them down because, I don't know, it gets onerous. You're all welcome to get this great book. And the Bible describes the discord between the powerful ones and Yahweh. So therefore, Yahweh is not a powerful one, and it's plural. So who are they? Because supposedly God one made everything, but then you've got all these guys making things. So what's going on here? The puzzle continues within the Ten Commandments. The very first commandment, you shall have no other gods before me. Well, what other gods? And, you know, they could be made up gods. They could be false gods. But why would people do that? So it's a really legitimate question. Let me make sure I have the right page here. The other gods, the powerful ones, don't exist. If they don't exist, why does this have to be said? Why would God have to say that at all? We may rationalize and say, oh, he must mean imaginary gods, but that's covered in the next sentence. You shall not make yourself a carved image, any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that's in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them, nor serve them. Them who? For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children to the third and fourth generations of those who hate me, but showing mercy to thousands, to those who love me and keep my commandments. The commandments implies a multiplicity of powerful ones, all to be rejected, with the exception of Yahweh. And Yahweh's kind of a, I won't say it, but he is. This implies many powerful ones, all to be rejected except Yahweh, who demands cruelty, like scorched earth genocide. Yahweh punishes Saul for not going scorched earth. He rejects his kingship, Saul's, and sends a demon to torture Saul. Yahweh cannot be reasoned with. He drives Saul to killing himself. Yahweh is angry, and he doesn't want to be replaced by a human king. Well, that's pretty petty for an all-powerful being. And even though Saul tries hard to obey Yahweh and please Yahweh, this whole thing just challenges our morality, this concept. It has nothing to do with the teachings of Jesus. This is all old, ancient lore. Now, do we take it literally or not? But either way, it has nothing to do with the teachings of Jesus. Yahweh always appears in fire and smoke from the top of a mountain in a vehicle. And would a divinity need to do that? Would he need a device like an ark to communicate, like the Ark of the Covenant to communicate? Especially one that causes tumors in the neighbors of the Israelites. So what's that? What's up with that? Or would a God require the murder of 70,000 under the reign of King David? This stuff doesn't agree with the morality of God in the New Testament. It's like a completely different God. God had a makeover, you know. By the book of Acts, early Christians had decided that the Jewish law no longer was a part of Christianity, and the earliest Christian church fathers preferred to take Platonism as the foundation of Christianity. But the Old Testament, which includes the Hebrew Scriptures, they were attached to the New Testament and to create the Bible. And they have a God who is morally confused, dissonant, and incompatible with the God in the New Testament, the God of Jesus. If they had stuck with Platonism, Christianity may have been more open to a larger worldview or other mythologies, and would include reincarnation. They voted on that. That always drives me crazy. They voted on Jesus as an entity of the divine or purely human. And what was he before he incarnated here? So he could incarnate, but the rest of us can't. All of this Platonic belief system is less violent and less hierarchical. So there were early Christian theologians like Marcion and Origen, and they've been willing to consider questions like this. And because they publicly pose these questions and try to analyze this from a sensible point of view, they were kicked out as heretics. And Wallis says his friends called him a heretic. Chapter 12, I have called you friends. Origen advised preachers to ignore the problematic texts and to focus on the moral, or to treat it as an allegory. Now, this is in the early Christian years. I think I could be 100 or so years off, but I think around the 400s, maybe a little earlier. Marcion was willing to believe that not all the stories were necessarily about God. They could be about the Elohim, who were entities. The God of Jesus could not be Yahweh. So Marcion rejected the angry, vengeful, cruel parts of the Hebrew scriptures as not a true God. He liked the Gospels and the letters of St. Paul and St. Luke, which, it's a whole other discussion. But none of his belief system was accepted by the mainstream early Christian church because Jesus affirmed them as a source of allegory. And so they hung on to these stories. Jesus always made a point. What he said, Jesus always made this point, that what he said trumped the Old Testament. And if they didn't agree, dump the Old Testament. But eventually it all got sort of sucked into the Bible. And the imperative of the Hebrew commandments really were superseded by the Sermon on the Mount. Do unto others, love one another. But the Orthodox church leaders disapproved of all of Marcion's writings, and they had them all destroyed. They're gone. They're all gone, because the early church leaders destroyed it. They called him the firstborn of Satan. Origen was willing to do theological gymnastics to provide the church with the rationale that the Old Testament and the New Testament were the same God. He told everyone that Jesus wasted, that can't be right. I think it's wanted. I can't read my writing. Wanted them to not take the Old Testament stories literally, that they were allegories. And when God is cruel or immoral, the reader needs to reject the plain reading and interpret it as an allegory. And Jesus basically said that. But the double talk is, we believe the text is inspired, but deny its claims. In the 2nd and 3rd century, theologians urged Greek thought as the Christian Old Testament scriptures. Jesus' New Testament, Plato was kind of Old Testament, and then they rejected that and accepted Hebrew scripture as the Old Testament and Jesus' New Testament. So instead of something that would make a natural progression from Plato to Jesus, you got this dissonance between Yahweh and Jesus. The Christian God, therefore, is to be feared and loved without question at the same time. So this was in conflict with the rest of world thought, because, this is not the only school of thought in the world. There are other places, other people, different points of view. And it really set us up in this us against them, right against wrong, reward against retribution, heaven against hell, and the expectation of perpetual persecution. Would a Bible with no Old Testament God have a better relationship with humanity and the larger world? Marcion urged Greek philosophy. He said Paul manipulated the Old Testament scriptures to align better with the New Testament and ignored most of what was left. Paul makes the connection between sacrifices to an angry God and Jesus's death. He says, Jesus was sacrificed to God in the same way they would sacrifice animals in the Old Testament on an altar to Yahweh. This is very strange. So our religious propensity to offer sacrifices and offerings is really hardwired into us, according to Wallis. This comes from our origins, originally as slaves that were trained to bring food products and minerals and the produce and products of the earth to the sky people. So what Wallis is postulating is we were created to serve a function of producing food and natural resources for ET entities. They hybridized us to do the work and to bring them the stuff. And it's manufactured into our DNA. And so millennia later, humans were still sacrificing things to the gods. It's deep wiring of subservience, and it does not serve the interests of humanity. It predisposes us to autocracy, to taxation and exploitation of the many by the few. And I would add that he doesn't mean we shouldn't all pitch in to help. He's just saying the inequity. It's a pathology. It's a genetically engineered pathology that keeps us manageable, and it's why we give up our power and why we are fascinated by elites and the rich. And in parentheses, I wrote Kardashians. I pick on them a lot. They're great for a lot of kind of examples, of all sorts of things. Okay, is this deep wiring the reason why we allow ourselves to be hijacked by elites, whether through corrupted systems of money and banking, unjust patterns of employment, forcible enslavement, police brutality, or political tyranny? The claim of the Sumerian and Babylonian accounts of our creation is that that is precisely what we were engineered to do. And I'll just toss in there from The Cult of Trump by Dr. Stephen Hassan, they now know for a fact that people raised within the confines of patriarchy, patriarchal family structure, patriarchal cultural structure, and or a theocratic hierarchical structure will have neurological, anatomical, and biochemical permanent changes. The imposition of control and power externally by either a religious system or a form of rule, family rule, social rule, or government rule, changes your brain. So we must shake off these strictures of enslavement and learn to labor for the common good, not for some higher power, and use our upgrades to develop a higher consciousness. And Jesus agreed with this. You have only one master, and you are all brothers and sisters. It's Jesus. He announced that he has come to give power to the afflicted and oppressed and to set captives free. He refers explicitly to release from slavery when he says, "Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And if the Son sets you free, then you are free indeed." And he says to his deputies and followers, "I have called you friends. Servants don't understand what their masters are about, but I have called you friends." In other words, I'm not your master. You're not servants. We are on an equal level. Parable teaches that we serve God by caring for one another. The New Testament provides a new vision of love and compassion for humanity. And according to ancient texts, we were programmed for slavery, and our brains were intentionally downgraded to maximize our usefulness and to keep us pliable. And today, we only use about 90% of our brain if we're lucky. So chapter 13, "Please, sir, I want some more." A quote from one of my favorite authors. In 1980, 10-year-old Orlando Sorrell was knocked out by a baseball, and he awoke with the ability to tell what day of the week, of any date, tell him, okay, January 3rd, 1425, tell me the day. And he could tell you the day. And he could remember what he did. If you asked him about any day of his life, he could remember exactly what he had done in total detail. This is called acquired savant syndrome. And it comes from somebody having a central nervous system injury. And it increases their neurological capacity. So they get a blow to the head, and instead of breaking things, it augments things. In 2012, Ben Mahan was in a car crash and had a head injury and was in a coma for a week. And when he woke up speaking and writing Mandarin. And he also spoke English and wrote English as well. So he was so fluent after his head injury that he moved to Shanghai, he hosted a TV game show, and he studied at a Chinese university. Studies with dementia indicate that the loss of one area of the brain may release untapped cognitive abilities from elsewhere. For example, the artist with degeneration was anonymously judged, and her later works were judged to show huge growth. So this is a woman who was an artist. She developed dementia, and they did a study. They had her do her artwork that she was doing anyway within her dementia, and it was anonymously shown to a bunch of art critics. And they said that she'd shown huge growth from the time she didn't have dementia to the time that she did. Growth in skill and symbolic interpretation of her stuff after the onset of the degeneration of her brain. It's called disinhibition. So what's doing the inhibition? And why? What's going on here? Researchers speculate that abilities are dominant in all of us, and they just need to be brought forward. The message of Jesus is all about elevating human abilities. That's the real message, which is the opposite of what, these angry gods did with their floods and their towers. So let's see here. The New Testament calls on its hearers to learn how to participate in the divine nature and escape the corruption of the world. The exhortation that follows is to goodness, understanding, self-control, perseverance, devotion, kindness, and love. And these are given as means by which we can elevate ourselves to a higher way of being. In his most famous teaching, the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus teaches ways of being that are not only healthy at a societal level, but which avoid behaviors that have potential to ruin any life. The destructive behaviors which Jesus calls us to disengage include writing people off, adultery, being led by lust, infidelity to our spouses, dishonesty, revenge, selfishness, meanness, hatred, and abuse of children. And in each instance, Jesus appeals to a higher faculty, one resident in every human being, our ability to foresee consequences. He advocated freedom from priests and elites and exemplifies life with slave programming switched off. The Popol Vuh described us before we were switched off. It speaks of an earlier setting whereby we can see beyond what is local and physical. So according to this ancient Mayan text, this is what people could do before the gods felt threatened and downgraded us. We could see what was beyond our local and physical area. What would life be like with powers of perception switched on at that level? The book of Genesis and the cuneiform tablets speak of a previous setting engineered for fantastically long lifespans. With what confidence, patience, and courage might we live if we were equipped with super robust health and longevity? Before Babel, Genesis portrays a world of mutual understanding and easy communication. How good would a 21st century be if it were built on concord like that? When Jesus did his miracles and people were blown away, he told them, "These and even greater things will you do." So now we're on chapter 14, the conclusion. Who am I? So Wallis's exploration of ancient texts led him to easily believe that our galaxy is densely populated and seeded by higher intelligence. Jesus said, "Flesh gives birth to flesh, spirit gives birth to spirit. Anyone who believes in me will do what I have been doing. These and even greater things will he do." And both of these quotes that we can rise above programming and elevate our consciousness. Jesus said, that his universal family had grown. And Paul Wallis, at the conclusion of the book, ends with that sort of reference to the teachings of Jesus in the New Testament, you know, really focusing in on them and setting aside all the other stuff. Suddenly you see a repetition of ancient philosophies from a lot of other places. And that's kind of the premise of the entire book. Is like, wait a minute. There's a commonality. Our story may not be correct. There's a lot of nasty, mean girl kind of gods going on here. We don't need any of that. So that's the end of the book. Escaping from Eden. Does Genesis teach that the human race was created by God or engineered by ETs? Great book, and he's got several others, and I have gotten them. I have books prepared. I have a little bit of a queue going on. So we are going to get to more of Paul Wallis's books, I promise. They were extremely popular, and I appreciate the feedback. So now let's talk about our book drawing. And I don't want to embarrass people, but I feel very, very, very grateful to the people who reached out to me and donated money for the books. It's a little hard to keep up. You know, books are pretty expensive. So what I bought several Paul Wallis books. I bought the rest of the Dolores Cannon books that we were in the middle of, that we hadn't finished, The Convoluted Universe, and a couple of others. And I got the book we're going to do next week, and a couple of others. I'm trying to remember what they were. I'll point them out. Linda Moulton Howe's second volume, Glimpses of Other Realities. It's been fabulous to be able to do that and not feel, you know, guilty. So I truly appreciate it, and I'd like to personally thank the donors. I hope you aren't embarrassed that I'm naming names. I will just name your last initial. So a very sincere thank you. I'm deeply grateful and really humbled that you would do this for not just me, but it's for everybody. And we're going to raffle off these books as we move along. So Jacqueline W., Mary T., Julia D., Sherry L., Dorothy M., Yvonne B., Ann S., Patricia A., Joey F., hi Joey, Patricia R., and Geraldine G. Now, if you didn't hear your name called when you sent me money, chances are I just scrolled too fast and skipped over you, and I'll be really embarrassed, but the potential exists. And let me know, because we want to be sure that PayPal's doing the right thing too. Yeah. So thank you very, 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 very much. Let's do a drawing. So I think I will do this. I will raffle off this book, Escaping from Eden. I was really careful not to mark it up too much. Usually I'm a lot more aggressive the way I mark books up. I tried very hard not to, because I want to raffle this off. Or another book of your choice within the selections available. I do have Linda Moulton Howe's books, but I'd like to first raffle off volume 1. So you have a choice. You can get Paul Wallis's book, Linda Moulton Howe's book. And if you already have those books and I pull your name, I have a ton of books and my children don't want them. And I'm not getting any younger, and I don't want to just take them to Goodwill. So I'm starting to raffle things off here, and we'll pick a topic. I have books on ETs. I have books on parapsychology, life after death, history, art. I'm just, you know. So we'll pick a subject, and I'll select a book that, you know, I'm willing to part with, and you can make your choice. All that being said, look at this cute little box, little Claw-to-Ring box. You know, I had my own cleaning business for years when my children were little, and I cleaned both bookstores in town, of course, never got any money from them. This is the kind of thing I got. And they had these handmade boxes. Okay. You can see this is lots of little papers, so this is very exciting. Let me stir them up. Keep my eyes closed so I'm not tempted to look. These are all the same little pieces of paper, and the big winner is Dorothy M. Dorothy M., you know who you are because you donated to the book fund, and I'm very grateful. Thank you. And I'll put your name back in here. So Dorothy M., email me at irishgrannytarot@gmail.com. And or if you forget you can't find it, just put it in the comments for this book and we'll connect, and I'll get your address and I'll mail you your prize. You won probably this, maybe some other book. We'll see. We'll talk about it. So that's the most recent book thing, and I've got questions for the cards. So the one question that jumped out at me from the book that I just thought was so interesting, so let's do a couple of cards about it, is that Death Star, that moon of Saturn that looks like the Death Star from George Lucas's movie. I don't know which movie it was. Did he do Star Wars? I can't remember. See, I'm not big on these movies, so I don't know for sure. But he did it like in 76, I think they said, and it wasn't discovered till 2005. Okay, so what's going on there? Let's ask the cards. What's going on with George Lucas? How do you know about that? And the question I wrote in the margin of the book was he channeling? But let's just draw a couple of cards here. And this is the Touchstone Tarot by Cat Black. It's Renaissance art. Okay. What's up with George Lucas? Glasses. Well, we get the Lovers, and you know, I kind of look at this as, you know, in this context, we're looking at Adam and Eve, and there's the messenger of the gods there up there above their heads, giving them the angel of truth and light. So he's channeling something. He was inspired. Let's call this inspiration, and let's see what it's about. The Six of Coins, the Six of Pentacles. It's like this is the information that I'm getting in the context of George Lucas and this topic. This was one of those fair exchanges. He was given a message that he could impart, and the benefit to him was the fame and the respect and the money, but he was providing something equally, if not more valuable for people. There are moral lessons and information about us in those movies. The Nine of Coins, the sense that, okay, you know, he's on one level, this is very beneficial for him, so this was lucky for George Lucas to be the one to pass on this information. At the same time, it's lucky for all of us, because with knowledge comes power. With knowledge comes abundance. With knowledge comes comfort. And knowing and understanding ourselves will put us in a much better position on this planet with each other and the Mother Earth. And this is great. The Seven of Wands. Were I to say this in a public forum, well, I guess I am, but you know what I mean. What would the reaction be? I would have to be defending myself. And I think George Lucas, hugely popular, movies hugely popular, but there's a certain segment of society for whom they're hugely popular, and others who just, you know, just dismiss science fiction. But operative word being fiction. And here we have George Lucas, the Nine of Cups, just sitting back sort of smugly, counting his blessings. that all derive from this information. And let's see who's at the bottom. The Four of Swords. Now that's interesting. It's about taking a break, retreating backwards. And I wonder, you know, the impression I get is that this information, we still weren't quite ready for it. Just, it's really it's a problem. It's a problem, the human brain. We have a difficult time accepting big ideas. And this may be something we're simply not ready for yet. They're kind of waiting for us to, I don't know, come to our senses, and it's not looking great. So now, what's the next question? Why, let me use this other deck. It's a little smaller to handle. Why the obfuscation? Why does the government, and why do the militaries and governments everywhere want so badly to keep this information away from the public? A lot of theories about it, and there may not be one answer. There may be different agenda for different people. Oh, well, okay. The Queen of Wands. This is about retaining power and control. It's this intuitive knowledge that that these guys have, that let go of this, relinquish this, and share it with everybody, and you've lost your stranglehold. See, they're afraid that we'll free. Speaking of strangleholds, that's too funny. The Eight of Swords. This knowledge would release us from our bounds of ignorance, our bounds of lack of understanding, our ties to the three-dimensional world, our ties to the planet instead of the universe. No, they can't have that because fear of change. And this counts for all of them. Their fear of change and their reluctance to let go of power. The source of their power, the source of their control may be different. For some, it's religious belief and the fear around that, holding people enthralled to it. For some, it's patriarchal control and the ego around that. For some, it's about military, it's actual physical power and control. For others, it's governmental. It all boils down to people wanting to control other people and deny them their human rights. George Lucas sitting counting smugly counting his blessings. This information is going to come out. It's inevitable. Because we're not talking merely information about interplanetary travel. This is our spiritual evolution. It's unavoidable. It will come out. Is it going to happen tomorrow? They're never going to land on the White House lawn. I mean, first of all, if they're intelligent, they're not going to go to the White House. Not going to land on the White House lawn. There's not going to be this big War of the Worlds type of situation. There may be a manipulation of something like that. Let's ask it, will there be a false flag? Is it likely that there'll be a false flag UFO disclosure event as a means of social control? They want to protect the institutions. The Four of Wands. There's a great deal of fear on the part of the powers that be, all these different entities. Churches, governments, militaries, you know. They're terrified that their hegemony is going to be removed, challenged. So, let's read. Yeah, see, this is what they're afraid of. They're afraid of that impending and possibly aggressive presentation of information to the populace. The Chariot, I often get this card when I'm talking UFOs. I think that's very interesting. So there's a challenge going on here. Our institutions on the planet and the control of them versus an alien presence, an arrival, so to speak. Yeah. They're trying very hard to not reveal it and to prevent this revelation, disclosure, but the question is, would they be responsible for a fake disclosure? Very possibly. Interesting. The Five of Swords, the sense of betrayal, duplicity, kind of taking this decision, manipulating truth and taking this decision as kind of a last-ditch effort. They've done everything else to fight it. This may be their last decision, their last available choice left open to them. So this evaluation of where they stand in the battlefront and how best they can manipulate people. Oh, this is interesting. The Hanged Man. The sense I get from this card is that the decision here really reveals something, pretend to scare people and manipulate people. They're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. I'm speaking here in, idioms, damned if they do, damned if they don't. They're in a conundrum. And it's going to depend on the actual context of the situation at the moment. Judgment. So they're very well, it's possible there's going to come a time when it will have to be revealed and it will be truthful. And if it's not truthful, it's because it's truthful, but they're trying to get ahead of it in order to be the ones controlling the population for the reality to come. It seems a little tangled up there, but if you think about it, they don't want to tell people, they don't want to lose power. If they tell people before it suddenly happens on its own spontaneously, they still can control the narrative. And if they can create a disclosure event, they still control the narrative because they choose the time and place and how the story goes. So we have to be discerning and not jump to conclusions in either direction if something like that should occur. Were Wallis, Daniken, Francis Crick, are these guys on the right path for explaining to us our origins, the story behind our DNA, the source of our DNA, how the human race was created, constructed? Are they telling a narrative that's actually closer to the truth than how the old stories are being interpreted in the mainstream? Oh, this is so funny. The lovers reversed. Adam and Eve turned on their heads. And that would be yes. That would be a big yes. This overturns the conventional story of the Garden of Eden. The Three of Cups. A little message for us. Set aside the fear. We should be happy to know the truth because it expands our horizons. No. The truth that's been hidden is going to come out, the Queen of Cups. And when it comes out, it's not going to be so much, people will be afraid because this is going to be, it's already coming out. And people are afraid because this is so mind-blowing. It's so beyond the realm of our imagination. We have limited imagination and limited understanding, and it's going to be difficult for us to digest it. But it's coming from a place of concern and compassion. And that's not to say that there aren't competing agendas up there as much as there are here. But the ones that are on our side are really on our side, and they're coming from a place of compassion. We are their creatures as well as their brothers and sisters. And they bring us valuable things. And you notice, we don't get the King of Pentacles or the King of Cups. We get the Queen of Cups and Pentacles. There's an element of care here. And even if it's not the emotional care that we would identify with, it's a sense of responsibility and care for their own creation. The Knight of Swords. I think this is something that's imminent. I mean, not tomorrow. Well, I guess it could be tomorrow. But I think it's going to happen incrementally. The truth is coming out. Once again, the Queen of Swords. The truth is coming out in dribs and drabs. And one quick question, because I don't want to keep this forever. When it does happen, what are religions going to do? So now the Vatican's very smart, you know. They're not stupid. And they've gotten in front of it. They've come out and said, all right, you know, we're all brothers and sisters in God. And that way they're covering their bases. So no fools they. So we know how the Vatican will respond. But the Vatican, you know, it's as much a government entity as it is a religion, the Catholic Church. How are other religions going to react? Now, before I even pull a card, I imagine, say, Buddhists and Hindus, they'll be in the front of the line going, I told you so. But how are the rest of religions? The 4,000 varieties of Christianity, for example. Ooh, they're not going to be happy. The Knight of Wands. They're not going to like this thing that happens, and they're going to be defensive against what has occurred. It's not going to be... because this is the Hermit, this requires looking within, introspection, philosophizing, getting your head right with what you believe, and contrary to the evidence, right, is what they're coming from. And they're not going to be happy. This is the Sun reverse. They're going to reject the light being shined on this information. They're going to resist a growth in knowledge. They're going to resist a growing awareness. And they're going to try to get away with their usual control of the truth, lies, deception. This doesn't surprise me. This is kind of what I would have expected. And their Four of Cups are going to reject what's being told to us. They're going to say, oh, you know, delusion or demons or mental illness or whatever. But, you know, this is what we can look forward to, balance. We're gonna reach a point, I think, where eventually, and we're not talking tomorrow, we're probably not talking, I don't know, before the election. Talking time is difficult to place, but this is going to be an evolutionary process. It's ongoing right now. People talk about awareness, raising vibration, going into the fifth dimension. What they're really talking about is us coming to terms with the reality of our spiritual existence. And people are going to walk away in droves from conventional religious thinking. It's already happening. So that doesn't, you know, it's no great revelation. So I think that's all I'll do. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you liked that book. If you have more questions about the book, don't hesitate. I just wanted to fill in the end of the video here. Just a few questions of my own, but you guys always come up with really good questions. I'm challenged when it comes to that. I'm too close to the subject matter, and I've already spent too much time engaging with it. It needs a fresh eye to come up with the questions, so I really appreciate it when you give me a question. Now, if you write a comment and I don't respond, you write a question and I don't answer it, it's probably because it's gotten lost. I've been plowing my way through a whole treasure chest of lost comments, some of them 2 and 3 years old, and I'm slowly making my way through them. So if you wrote me a comment 2 years ago and you suddenly get a reply that makes absolutely no sense, that's why, because I've just discovered it, and I do want to respond. If you have a question and it doesn't get an answer within a reasonable amount of time, ask it again and put it in capital letters. It'll catch my eye. So thank you very much for watching. Congratulations. Oh God, what did I do? Oh, it was Dorothy, right? Congratulations to win, and I will send you your book as soon as you get in touch with me, and we'll see what's up. And oh, thanks for all the kind comments too about the guests, the chats that I've been having with guests. It's been really fun. Sort of an extension of the holiday season. It's been one gigantic party for a couple of weeks. It seems like that's all I've done. And I've got some great ones more coming up, so hang in there. Thanks very much. Slán go fóill. Sláinte.